Hi, I'm Amalia Ashford. I'm 35 years old. I live in Seattle, and I work in digital marketing for a software company that thinks ping pong tables are a substitute for raises. I've been with my husband, Daniel, for 5 years, married for 8 months. On paper, my life looks stable. Steady job, loving husband, a modest but warm condo with a window that catches morning light in the prettiest way. But it took me a long time to get here, longer than it should have. And the reason for that is the story I'm about to tell you. To understand why my mother ended up in my kitchen screaming that I was dead to her, you have to understand the beginning. You have to understand the choices I made, the guilt I carried, the lies I believed simply because I needed to believe them. Let me take you back 10 years. Back when I was 25, newly graduated with a marketing degree, drowning in $18,000 of student loans and trying to convince myself that adulthood wouldn't swallow me whole. I had just landed my first real job, $58,000 a year, which felt like winning the lottery after years of microwave noodles and thrift store clothes. I moved into a tiny studio with a kitchenette so small, I joked the oven was only big enough for one emotional breakdown at a time. 3 weeks into the job, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Sweetheart," she gushed, her voice syrupy sweet, in the way it only got when she wanted something. "I am so proud of you, my daughter, with a real career." Those words lit something inside me, something warm, fragile, desperate. For once, she wasn't criticizing me. For once, she wasn't comparing me to someone else. For once, she was proud. "I have a tiny favor to ask," she continued, voice softening into something delicate, almost embarrassed. "I'm having a little trouble with my credit right now. Just temporarily, you understand." A short breath. "Could you add me as an authorized user on one of your cards? Just for emergencies, sweetheart. Only emergencies." I said yes, immediately, because she was my mother, because I thought helping her was what good daughters did, because I still believed her love was something I could earn if I just tried hard enough. If I could talk to my younger self now, I would grab her shoulders and tell her to run. But she didn't run. She handed her mother a lifeline that slowly turned into a chain I wouldn't break for 12 long, suffocating years. My mother's stilettos always announced her before she appeared. That sharp, furious rhythm, like someone stabbing the floor, had followed me through every apartment, every age, every version of myself I'd ever tried to grow into. This time was no different. I heard the clicks racing down my hallway before the knock even landed on my door. The sound alone made my chest tighten, like I was 20 years old again, bracing for whatever mood she carried like perfume. I opened the door, and there she stood, Patricia, with mascara streaked down her cheeks, lipstick smeared at the edges, and her hands trembling with a mix of rage and desperation. "You," she spat, stepping forward, "are dead to me, Amalia." Her voice was loud enough that Mrs. Henderson's door across the hall cracked open, the old woman's eye, peering out like this was her Saturday morning entertainment. I felt heat crawl up my neck, humiliation mixing with anger until the two were indistinguishable. "Mom, you need to calm—" "Don't you dare tell me to calm down." Patricia shoved past me into my condo, the scent of her expensive perfume filling the room, a painful reminder that she'd likely bought it with the very credit card I had just canceled. "You ungrateful little—" her voice cracked with fury. "After everything I've sacrificed for you?" My hands shook too, not with fear, but with the kind of fury that comes from being pushed past a line you didn't even know you had. "You haven't paid for a single thing in 12 years, Mom," I said quietly. "I have." She spun around, finger jabbing at my chest. "That card is mine. You had no right." "It's my name on the bill," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos inside me. "My money. My responsibility. You've been using it like an unlimited allowance." "I am your mother," she screamed, gripping the edge of my kitchen counter like she might collapse. "You don't get to cut me off like I'm some stranger." "You spent $13,000 last month," I whispered. $13,000. On what? Designer handbags, spa weekends, first-class flights. She burst into ugly sobs, sobs I'd seen enough times to know they weren't grief. They were panic, fear of losing control. "Do you have any idea," she wailed, "what it's like to watch everyone else have nice things while you're stuck with nothing?" "You're not stuck with nothing. Steven pays for—" "Steven doesn't understand." She slammed her palm against the counter. "He doesn't understand that a woman needs certain things to feel valued, to feel like she matters." "So you used me instead?" Patricia's face twisted. Something cruel shimmered in her eyes. "I raised you alone after your father left." "Dad didn't leave," I said softly. "You divorced him." And you married Stephen 2 years later. You were not a struggling single mother. Her hand flew up. For a split second, I actually flinched, sure she was going to hit me. Instead, she pointed at the door, her finger trembling violently. You're going to regret this, Amalia, you hear me? Mom! Get out! I stared at her. This is my apartment. Then I'll leave. She stormed toward the door, her final words thrown like venom across the room. You're dead to me. The door slammed so hard a picture frame rattled on the wall. I stood there, chest heaving, surrounded by the echo of her rage. And I did the one thing that terrified her most. The thing that shattered the last thread she had used to bind me to her. I called the credit card company and canceled the card she had been using for 12 years. If I had known how quickly, just for emergencies, would turn into something else, something monstrous, I might have hesitated. But back then I was 25, naive, still half convinced that adulthood was just a bigger version of childhood, where parents knew best and daughters helped when asked. The first month after adding my mother to my credit card, the bill looked normal. Groceries, gas, a dinner out, 50 here, 80 there. Reasonable, manageable, things a mother might genuinely need help with. I remember opening that first statement and feeling proud. Like I was finally doing something meaningful for her, like this was a step toward being the daughter she wanted. But by the third month, the charges began to grow teeth. A $900 weekend trip to Portland, a $1,200 networking dinner, $700 at a boutique where she claimed she was buying professional clothes. I confronted her gently at first. Mom, these seem a little high, don't you think? I just started my job. I don't have much left after my student loans. She cut me off with a perfect wounded sigh. Sweetheart, you know how competitive the job market is for someone my age. I have to look presentable, and you want me to get more hours, don't you? It sounded reasonable. It always sounded reasonable. As a kid, I'd watched her spin excuses like thread, thin, shiny, and convincing until you looked closely and saw the entire thing was fraying. My father had argued about credit cards constantly. Stephen, the stepfather who came later, switched to separate accounts after finding out she'd opened several cards behind his back. She was good at spending. She was terrible at consequences. But I didn't know that yet. Not fully. Not enough to see what was happening. By the time I was 27, my mother had charged almost $30,000 on my card. By the time I was 28, the total crept into the 40s. At 29, we crossed 50. And at 30, I hit a number that made me physically sick, $68,000 over 5 years. I should have been moving into a nicer apartment. I should have been building savings. I should have been planning my future like all my coworkers did, with their weekend trips to wine country and their cozy homes filled with plants that hadn't died from stress. Instead, I was stuck in the same shoebox studio from my 20s, eating clearance cereal and pretending I wasn't drowning. It was around that time I met Daniel, quiet, observant, the kind of man who listened more than he talked. A data analyst with a shy smile and a mind that caught patterns like they were falling leaves. We'd partnered on a joint project between our companies. I remember the way he looked at me across the conference table. Curious, amused, drawn in like he could sense the exhaustion I was trying so hard to hide. We started with coffee, then walks, then late-night conversations where he asked the kind of gentle questions that made me feel seen and accidentally safe. 8 months into dating, he asked a question that made my stomach twist. Amalia, why are you still living in a studio? I laughed it off, deflected, changed the subject. But Daniel didn't let it go. He never asked with judgment, only concern, like he was trying to understand a puzzle that didn't make sense. One night, he sat beside me on my sagging thrift store couch, took a slow breath, and said, "Can I see your budget?" His voice was careful, respectful, but I felt exposed anyway. Like if he saw the truth, he'd look at me differently. Like he'd see how messy things really were. How messy I was. I hesitated. I tried to joke. I tried to dodge. But Daniel simply waited, patient and warm, until something inside me cracked open. I handed him the stack of credit card statements. He didn't speak for a long time. He just flipped through page after page of my mother's spending. Designer purses, luxury salons, jewelry stores, flights, restaurants, things I'd never even let myself dream of buying. When he finally looked up, his jaw was tight. Amalia, this is financial abuse. I shook my head instantly. No, she's struggling. For 5 years, he said softly, with tens of thousands of dollars? Sweetheart, this isn't a hard time. This is manipulation. She's my mother, and you're her daughter, he said, not her bank. His voice cracked on that last word. Something in him was breaking, not because he was angry at me, but because he hated seeing me carry this weight. It was the first time anyone had ever said the truth out loud. I didn't believe him. Not yet. Not fully. But something shifted. A small, trembling seed of doubt. When Daniel proposed at 32, I thought things would finally fall into place. We planned a simple wedding. 60 people, modest budget, nothing extravagant. My mother had different plans. The Fairmont, she demanded. Anything less would embarrass me. You mean me? I corrected gently. She waved that away. You're my only daughter. What will people think if your wedding is cheap? Behind me, Daniel stiffened. We're paying for this ourselves, he said calmly. We're staying within our means. Her eyes snapped to him, venomous. I knew it. He's the one turning you against me. That's when we set the boundary. The first real one I had ever given her. Mom, I said, holding the phone tightly the next morning. The credit card is now for emergencies only. Medical bills, car repairs, nothing else. Silence. Then, are you serious right now? Yes. This is Daniel's influence, she hissed. You would never treat me this way. My hands trembled. My ribs felt too tight. But I held the line. For the first time in my life, I held the line. She hung up. Didn't speak to me for 3 weeks. Then called crying, apologizing, begging for a second chance. For a moment, I believed her. For a moment, I let myself hope. The charges stayed small for 4 months. 60 here, 100 there. I wanted so badly to think it meant she respected me. Until July. The statement came in. $13,000. And with it, the beginning of the end. The July statement didn't arrive like bad news usually does. Quietly, gradually, with warning signs you can pretend not to see. It arrived like a wrecking ball. I remember staring at the screen, the cold blue glow of my laptop washing over me like frost. $13,027.41. My brain refused to process it at first. I blinked, refreshed the page, checked the account, checked the name. No mistake, no glitch, no fraud alert. Just my mother, detonating the boundary I had so carefully built. There it was in black and white. Tiffany & Co. $3,800. Nordstrom designer handbags. $5,200. Toscana Spa Resort. $2,700. First class flights to San Francisco. $1,300. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. I stood up so fast the chair screeched across the hardwood. My heart hammered against my ribs, every pulse a betrayal. Daniel heard it in my voice the moment he called my name from the hallway. What happened? I couldn't speak. I just turned the laptop toward him. His face tightened, his jaw flexed. He leaned closer, reading each line carefully, like he didn't want to believe it either. Amalia. His voice was too soft, too controlled, the kind of tone a person uses when they're holding back an explosion. She promised, I whispered. I know. She promised. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking violently as I typed her number. She answered instantly, cheerful, like she'd been waiting for this. Oh, honey, I was hoping you'd call. Did you see the $13,000? My voice cracked in the middle, more from shock than anger. What is that? Oh, that, she exhaled dramatically, as though I were overreacting. Well, it's your father's birthday next month. You and Dad have been divorced for 27 years. We're cordial. Can't I buy my ex-husband something nice? With my money? She clicked her tongue. Amalia, you're being selfish again. This is exactly what I worried about with Daniel. He's making you... Mail me the card, I said, cutting her off. My voice was ice. I didn't recognize it. She laughed. Actually laughed. You won't really do that. Try me. Listen to yourself, she snapped. You sound unstable. Let's talk when you calm. I hung up. Then I called the credit card company, reported the card lost, and requested a new one with a different number. Within an hour, her card was dead. She called 18 times in the next 2 hours. Then 19. Then texts began to flood in, each one more vicious than the last. How could you do this to me? I'm your mother. Stephen is so disappointed in you. You're a cruel, ungrateful daughter. You'll regret this. That last message made something inside me snap. I called Stephen directly. He answered on the second ring, sounding breathless, like he'd rushed to the phone. Amalia? Is everything okay? Did Mom tell you what happened? She said you canceled her credit card. Confusion, not anger. But I didn't know she had a card with you. I thought it was ours. I closed my eyes. The tiniest spark of relief flickered. Stephen, she's been using mine for 12 years. Silence, then, oh my God. A long exhale. I had no idea. How much? Over $68,000. I heard the soft thud of him sinking into a chair, Then a broken, Jesus Christ, I should have known. It's not your fault. I should have paid closer attention. His voice trembled. After that incident with the hidden credit cards when we first got married, I thought we were past this. I kept separate finances so I wouldn't have to police her spending. I thought if she only had to manage her own expenses, she'd stay under control. She found a loophole, I whispered, and it was me. I'm so sorry, Amalia, and I believed him. A week and a half passed with radio silence from Patricia. Then, early Saturday morning, there was a knock. I opened the door to find her standing there with red, swollen eyes, her hair messy, her voice small. Amma, can I come in? Every instinct screamed no, but habit. Habit pulled me aside. She sat on my second-hand couch, looked around my tiny apartment like she had never truly seen it. You're really struggling here, aren't you? She murmured. I was doing fine, I said, until I spent 12 years paying for your lifestyle. She flinched, and for a moment, just a moment, I thought she might apologize. I never asked you to do that, she whispered. Every time you used that card, you asked. She sniffed, wiped her cheek. I thought you wanted to help me. I thought we were family. Family helps each other. No, Mom. My voice was steady. Family doesn't drain you dry. She started crying, real tears, not the performative ones. Her voice shook. I don't know how to manage money, Amma. I've never been good at it, even with your father, even with Stephen. I always mess things up. I try, but then I see something beautiful and I convince myself I deserve it. That I've worked hard enough, that it'll make everything feel better. So you used me instead, I said softly. I never meant to hurt you. But you did. Silence, then a shaky breath. I'll pay you back every penny, I swear. Mom, I swallowed. You make $14,000 a year. You can't pay me back. Her face shifted. The remorse faded. The mask slipped. What do you want from me then? She snapped. I want you to respect my boundaries. Live within your means. Stop treating me like... She stood up abruptly. I came here to apologize, she said through clenched teeth, and you're throwing it back in my face. I'm not. No, I see it now. Daniel has poisoned you. You've chosen him over your own mother. Something inside me splintered. And that's when the scene from the beginning happened. The screaming, the accusations, the echoing threat. You're dead to me. She slammed the door so hard the picture frame by the entryway fell and shattered across the floor. Daniel found me an hour later, curled on the couch, knees hugged to my chest, surrounded by broken glass I didn't have the strength to clean. He knelt beside me, pulled me into his arms, and whispered, You did the right thing. I'm proud of you. I broke into sobs. Grief, anger, guilt, relief, an entire decade of emotions unraveling at once. We got married 6 months later. My mother didn't come. I invited her anyway. She never replied. The empty seat in the front row felt like a wound. But Stephen came, and when he walked me down the aisle with tears in his eyes, I realized something quietly, achingly true. You don't need someone who gave you life to love you like family. You just need someone who shows up. The wedding was beautiful in the way simple things often are. Soft light, warm laughter, a room full of people who genuinely loved us. But even then, even wrapped in my dress and Daniel's arms and the gentle music of a string quartet, there was a hollowness in the front row. An empty chair. The one we'd reserved for my mother. I didn't cry about it. Not then. I told myself I was past hoping she would choose me. But when Stephen walked me down the aisle, his hand trembling just slightly, something deep inside me cracked anyway. He leaned toward me, whispering like he was afraid to break the moment. You deserve joy, Amalia. Don't ever let anyone take that from you. For the first time in years, I believed it. 2 weeks after the wedding, my phone rang again. It was Stephen. His voice was low, heavy. Amalia, I need to tell you something. My stomach plummeted. What happened? Your mother and I, we're getting divorced. I sat down hard on the couch. What? Stephen, no. Why? I started looking into our finances more carefully after our last conversation. I heard papers rustling on his end. She's been hiding debt from me. $34,000. Across 4 cards I didn't even know existed. My hand flew to my mouth. Oh my God. She's been making minimum payments using money I thought was going into our joint savings. I'm 62. I should be preparing for retirement, not digging us out of this. A shaky breath. I can't do this anymore. I closed my eyes, leaning forward as grief pressed down on my spine. Not grief for the marriage. Patricia had been draining him for years. Grief for Stephen, because he didn't deserve this. I'm so sorry, I whispered. It's not your fault, he said. But I wanted to warn you. Warn me? She's going to blame you for this. I swallowed hard. She already is. He was right. 4 days later, Aunt Caroline called. I hadn't heard her voice in months. "What have you done, Amalia?" she demanded before I could even say hello. "Caroline, your mother told me everything. Her marriage is falling apart because of you, because you humiliated her, because you cut her off. Stephen is leaving because she can't contribute financially now that you've taken away the cards she depended on." I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar ache behind them. This script. I knew every line of it. "That's not what happened," I said quietly. "Mom hid debt from him. Don't you dare talk about her that way," Caroline snapped. "You're just like your father. Selfish. Cruel." The words landed like blows. "I'm done listening to your excuses," she hissed. "Your mother deserves better." She hung up. I stared at the phone, the silence between us as loud as a slap. That was only the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, 4 of my mother's friends called. 2 cousins sent long, angry texts. Another aunt left a voicemail sobbing that I'd destroyed the family. My mother had spun a full narrative. The devoted mother abandoned by her heartless daughter. The innocent wife left destitute because of me. Not the woman who'd burned through my 20s. Not the woman who'd drained 2 marriages dry. No, in her story, she was a victim. And I was a villain. 8 months passed. Silence stretched between us like an ocean. Cold, impossible to cross. Then, one rainy Tuesday night, my phone lit up. "Mom." I froze. Daniel looked up from the stove. "Amma?" The phone rang twice, then 3 times. My heartbeat was a drum in my throat. I picked up. Her voice was small, fragile. "Amma, I need help." I didn't speak. "I can't afford rent," she said. "Not this month. The apartment, the bills. Can you help me? Just for a few months until I get back on my feet." I closed my eyes. Some part of me, the child part, the hopeful part, wanted to say yes, wanted to believe this was different. But I remembered the empty wedding chair, and the debt, and the lies, and the way she'd told people I was dead to her only a few months ago. "Mom," I said softly, "you told Aunt Caroline you never wanted to see me again." "I didn't mean that." "Yes, you did." "Amalia," she whispered, her voice breaking, "I have nowhere else to go." "That's not my fault," I said. A pause, sharp, crushing. "Please," she begged. "I'm your mother." "I know," I said. "I just don't think you've ever been mine." Silence, a long exhale. "You'll regret this," she whispered. I pressed end call, blocked her number. Then I put the phone down on the table and let myself shake. Daniel held me from behind, arms wrapping around me like a shield. "I'm here," he murmured into my hair. "I'm not going anywhere." Months passed, then seasons. Stephen kept in touch. He checked on me, sent updates when necessary. He told me that my mother had moved in with Aunt Caroline temporarily. It lasted 4 months. Then she tried to make Caroline pay for her salon appointments and treatments, insisting that's what family is for. Caroline kicked her out. Eventually, Patricia found a full-time job at a department store, her first consistent employment in years. She sold her designer handbags, the jewelry, the coats, the shoes, slowly paying down her debt, slowly learning to live within her means. Not because she wanted to, but because there was no one left to drain. Stephen told me once, voice heavy with grief, "I think Patricia finally learned the cost of her choices." I thought about that for a long time, about cost and choices, and the difference between guilt and accountability. And then one day, quietly, like dawn breaking, I realized something. I didn't feel guilty anymore. Not about cutting her off. Not about letting her face consequences. Not about choosing myself for the first time in my life. That surprised me, because for years, guilt had been the language she taught me. For years, guilt had been the currency of our relationship. But now, guilt wasn't the one in control. I was. Healing didn't come as a single revelation or a dramatic sunrise moment. It came quietly, the way seasons change. One day you look up and realize the leaves aren't the same color they were before. Life got better, not in a sudden rush, but in small, gentle waves. Daniel and I bought a 2-bedroom condo with actual sunlight. Not the dim, apologetic light my studio used to get, but real sunshine that touched the walls like a promise. I got promoted. I started maxing out my retirement contributions. We planned trips, cooked dinners, hosted friends, laughed often. For the first time since my early 20s, I had money left in my bank account at the end of each month. I bought fresh flowers without guilt. I slept through the night without waking up to check my bank balance. I stopped holding my breath every time my phone buzzed. Freedom, I learned, didn't feel like rebellion. It felt like peace. Then one morning, everything changed again, but not in a devastating way, in a breathtaking one. I stared at the pregnancy test on the bathroom counter, hands trembling, even though I hadn't expected them to. 2 pink lines. Clear. Certain. Daniel, I whispered. He burst into the bathroom, hair sticking up, still half asleep, toothpaste on the corner of his mouth. What happened? Are you okay? I held up the test. For a second, he just blinked. Then he looked at me with such fierce, overwhelming joy that my throat closed. A baby? He whispered. We're having a baby? I nodded. Tears blurred everything. He pulled me against him, arms tight, forehead pressed to mine. A daughter, the doctor confirmed at our 12-week scan. A daughter. The word alone made my chest ache in a new way. A good ache. An ache heavy with hopes and fears and promises I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. Daniel cried when we told Stephen. You two are going to be incredible parents, Stephen said, wiping his eyes. Then his voice broke a little. Amalia, would it be all right if I was her grandpa? I didn't even let him finish the sentence. Yes, I whispered immediately. Of course, you already are. His shoulders shook once, and he hugged me like the world was giving him something he had been afraid to hope for. And for the first time in my life, I realized something both beautiful and heartbreaking. You don't have to be related to someone to be family. And sometimes the people who are related to you never earn the title. I didn't tell my mother I was pregnant. People always ask me why. Isn't she still your mother? Doesn't she deserve to know? Shouldn't you give her a chance to meet her grandchild? But here's the truth. If my daughter ever came to me crying because someone drained her, used her, manipulated her, and demanded love in exchange for pain, I would tell her to run. I would tell her to protect her heart, her future, her worth. And if I wouldn't want her to tolerate that treatment from anyone, why would I teach her to tolerate it from her own grandmother? Some people say withholding a grandchild is cruel. But I think about the nights I sobbed on bathroom floors trying to figure out how to pay for 2 people's lives on one salary. I think about how many times she dangled love like bait, how often she said I'd regret setting boundaries, how she told people I was dead to her, how she hijacked my youth with the sound of stilettos and accusations. And then I think about my daughter, about what I want to teach her. Love is not supposed to break you. Respect is not optional. Family is not an excuse for abuse. Boundaries are not betrayal. Most importantly, you are not responsible for fixing adults who refuse to fix themselves. No, I don't feel guilty. Not anymore. I feel free. One evening, not long before my 3rd trimester, Daniel and I sat on the condo balcony watching the sun dip behind the skyline. Are you scared? He asked softly, hand resting on my stomach. Yes, I admitted, but not of being a mom. I exhaled. I'm scared of becoming her. He turned to me, eyes gentle, steady. You won't. How do you know? Because she never questioned whether she was right, he said. And you question it every day. You're already a better mother than she ever tried to be. His words hit a tender place inside me, the part still healing from decades of manipulation. I leaned into him, letting the steady rhythm of his breathing anchor me. For the first time since childhood, I realized the future didn't terrify me anymore. Because this time I was building it myself. Months passed. My belly grew. Daniel assembled the crib with a level of focus usually reserved for brain surgeons. Stephen brought over little gifts. Tiny socks, books he thought we'd love reading together, a hand-carved wooden rattle he'd made in his workshop. Life was full, quiet, safe. And then one day, as I folded newborn clothes, a thought surfaced that I had never once allowed myself to fully feel. I don't regret cutting her off. I regret not doing it sooner. I wasted 12 years trying to be the daughter she wanted instead of being the woman I needed to become. I wasted money I will never get back. Time I will never get back. Pieces of myself I will never get back. But I didn't waste the lesson. I learned it, and I will teach it to my daughter. With every choice, with every boundary, with every gentle truth I give her, I will show her that love is protection, not sacrifice. That respect is earned, not demanded. That family is chosen every day, not assigned at birth. And that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself, for your future, for the children who will grow from your choices, is to let go of the people who refuse to stop hurting you. They say blood is thicker than water. What they never mention is that sometimes blood can be toxic, and the healthiest thing you can do is walk away. I walked away, and I have never been happier.